Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira, on Rajya Sabha television. Over the next half an hour, we'll bring you a roundup of all the significant events to have happened around the world this week. But first, a look at the headlines. EU door remains open until UK departs, Macron tells May. Both leaders plan joint crackdown on online terror during their meet. Leaders agree to tackle radicalization with fines for tech companies that do not take action. Fire breaks out at Grenfell Tower in London early on Wednesday morning. 30 confirmed killed in the inferno, but death toll could rise to above 100. Queen and Prince William visit a relief centre for the victims. Another setback for President Trump's revised travel ban. A US appeals court rules against the order, saying it violates immigration legislation. White House says it will appeal in the country's Supreme Court. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to leave for United States on June 25th, two-day visit to include bilateral talks with Donald Trump on terrorism, defense and H-1B visas. Well, UK and France have decided on a joint crackdown on online terror. British Prime Minister May and French President Macron during their meet showed up a plan to tackle radicalization with fines for tech companies that do not take action. The two leaders also discussed Brexit, with Macron saying that as long as the negotiations are not over, there was still a possibility for UK to change the course of events.
Terror attacks in recent years, both France and the UK have decided to work together to tackle online extremism. The two countries will launch a joint campaign to push internet companies like Facebook and Google to do more to remove terrorist material. Announcing the move in Paris, the British Prime Minister Theresa May said the internet must not be a safe space for extremists. This comes as Theresa May was welcomed by French President Emmanuel Macron at the Élysée Palace on Tuesday for a working dinner.
Our discussions today have focused on the greatest security challenge our two countries face, tackling terrorism and rooting out the extremism that fuels it. Both our countries have, sadly, experienced the horrors of terrorism all too recently.
This concrete action plan will be implemented by our services. Its primary purpose is to strengthen the commitments and obligations of internet operators in order to delete content promoting hatred and terrorism in all types of media.
It is Prime Minister May's first foreign trip since losing her majority at the election. During the talks with Macron, the issue of Brexit also came up. Macron said the possibility of the UK remaining in the European Union is an option until Brexit negotiations have concluded. But he said he acknowledged and respected that a decision to leave had been taken by the British people.
The door, of course, is still open as long as Brexit negotiations have not been concluded, but a sovereign decision to leave the EU has been taken by the British people, and I respect the decisions taken by the people.
And I confirmed to President Macron that the timetable for the Brexit negotiation remains on course and will begin next week.
The meeting between Macron and May comes as UK officials gear up for the start of Brexit talks on 19th of June. May says those negotiations would begin on time despite the unexpected election result and the ongoing talks with the DUP to shore up a minority government. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, joining me for a chat this week to talk about this is Prabhupada Chaudhury, foreign editor, Hindustan Times. Welcome and thank you for joining me on the program. Prabhupada, Macron has said that the EU door is still open for Britain. Yes. What did he mean by that?
Yes, and not only that, in the same day, Wolfgang Schäuble, the German finance minister, said the same thing.
Yes,
he
so
said that
clearly they are all,
Yeah.
France and Germany are on the same page.
Yeah, but I think that keep in mind that one, the Europeans didn't want Britain to leave, and they were actually as shocked as David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, who called the Brexit referendum, was when they were both shocked that Britain was going to leave. Ultimately, Britain is the third largest economy in Europe. And it has been one of the strongest proponents of the free trade, free market reforms that Germany in particular has been very supportive of. So they've always wanted Britain to remain in the European Union. And I think their interpretation of the vote of the national elections that were just held were that in fact the British were giving a second thought to the idea of Brexit. So they've effectively dangled this possibility to Theresa May, or potentially even her successor. Because as you noticed, Macron said, till the negotiations are finalized, Schäuble said the same thing, the door is still open. So you could theoretically have a 2 to 3 year negotiation process. And at some point, at any point, a future British Prime Minister or May herself says, actually this is proving not to work out the way I want it to, will stay in, or I'll go for another referendum or something on that lines, then you can come back. And I think that makes sense.
But what kind of conditions may be imposed then in such kind of a situation? Because Britain is not in a very happy place at the moment.
But curiously, that since they haven't officially left, my guess is that the conditions would not be any different from what there were before the Brexit referendum was held. In other words, your membership would be exactly the same. Now, it's probably true, because remember, Britain had already exempted itself, even before the Brexit referendum, from the Schengen visa,
Yes.
from the use of the euro, and of a number of other things on immigration and so on. So those are already, Britain has never signed up for those. So I would suspect that they would not be too concerned. They would more or less say that if you want to decide to change your mind, then you can do so on the same terms which existed before the referendum. Having said that, it's very unlikely Britain will go down that path. Theresa May, the Brexit referendum, even 6 months after the referendum was held, when Britons were polled, a small majority, I think about 2 percentage points more, still said they want to leave. And ultimately, both the two biggest parties, the Tories as well as Labour, have both said that they accept that Brexit is now inevitable. They have not changed that position. Corbyn has never been very enthusiastic about the European Union. Theresa May has always said Brexit means Brexit. So there is no real evidence of a political momentum within either party or outside of those parties, except for very small Liberal Democrats and the Scottish Nationalist parties, both of which did all right but did not do exceptionally well in the latest election, are the only two parties that still believe that Britain should stay in the European Union.
Sure. You know, May has said that the talks will go on as scheduled, Brexit talks as scheduled next week, and they're beginning to and it'll go on is what she has said. But, you know, is she in a position now to, you know, come out with something concrete?
Well, she'll come up with a various set of proposals, and most of them will be obviously ones that the European Union, I suspect, will reject. And she will argue, as she has said, which is basically we want to maintain the trade and investment door open, and zero tariffs and all of that, but we will not accept the immigration, labor mobility, the European Court of Justice, and so on. And that's exactly where the Europeans say that's not acceptable. These are a package deal. If you're not going to accept the immigration, the labor, and the human rights and justice system of Europe, then you cannot expect to also receive favorable trade and investment from you. And that will be the crux of the negotiations. And the Germans at least have been very clear that if these negotiations go through and Britain does leave, it will be done on very, very harsh terms.
So it will indeed be a hard Brexit or join the EU. Something
basically there will be no gray
middle
area.
path.
Exactly, it will be a black and white position on the two sides. You can join, but if you're going to leave, you have to be punished. And that's going to be definitely the German position. And there's all evidence that Macron also supports that point
Sure.
of view.
And lastly, of course, both countries being struck by terror. Of course, terror has been a problem in France. Terror has been a problem in the UK as well. So, as far as terror is concerned, do you believe that both the nations are going to work together? At least they seem to be suggesting that they will.
I think that there's no doubt. Even when Russia and the United States are fighting with each other on various issues, they have been very clear that on fighting Islamist terror in particular, there is no shift of position. They both see that as a common enemy, and the Europeans will almost certainly have and continue to see that as a joint threat.
So could the fight against terror be a binding factor then?
Well, I think what will happen is that, as India has with a lot of Western countries and other countries, we will have continued very intense cooperation on counterterrorism. The problem remains that even when Britain was part of the European Union, it was sometimes difficult to coordinate what is effectively 25 different police services. And you notice one of the recent London attack was an Arab Italian, who was, the Italians warned the British that this man is a threat, and the British now say, we never received that. What happened to the message, we don't know, but we had no idea he was a threat. So clearly their coordination continues to be a problem. I don't think it's a political problem, it's an administrative problem.
Right.
That will remain, I think, a problem of just having so many different police and intelligence services within the European system. You should actually have one.
Sure.
And that has so far no sign the European Union is moving in that direction.
All right, we'll have to leave it to that. Thank you so much,
Sure.
Pramit, for joining us on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, moving on now, the death toll in the Grenfell Tower fire in London has risen to 30, even as authorities say it will climb to over 100. Police have launched a criminal investigation into what has become the worst fire tragedy in the country. Police have also admitted that it would be impossible to identify all of the victims of the tragedy. Prime Minister Theresa May has ordered a judge-led full public inquiry into the incident. Here's more.
The tragedy that befell Grenfell Tower in London has brought out the compassionate side of the city's residents. People from across the city have sprung into action to help survivors, offering clothes, blankets, food and many other daily supplies. Many have also opened their homes to the victims who lost everything in the fire. A few hundred meters away from the torched building in the Latimer neighborhood, a relief center has been set up. Temporary reception centers have also mushroomed around the city to accommodate survivors.
All of London's together, here as a team, as a community for everybody, and it was wonderful. It was good to see London being celebrated and London in action.
Loads of people were affected. This is really sad because this is our city, right? When something bad happens, people come together, and this is like one of those times.
What happened? It just hurt, you know. People see on TV and they just want to come and help.
The response of people living nearby who've provided help, compassion and support has, I think, once again shown the fantastic spirit of London. Earlier today I ordered a cross-government meeting to ensure that every assistance was being given to manage the emergency service response, and that group will meet again tomorrow. And once again, our emergency services, the fire service, ambulance, NHS and police have shown incredible bravery, working in truly appalling conditions. And their work will continue for some time, and I know everybody will want to join me in thanking them for their amazing bravery.
The Grenfell Tower apartment block was home to about 600 people. Several are still missing and the death toll is likely to go up.
Sadly, I can confirm that the number of people that have died is now 17.
My husband's family were living there.
Is your husband's family okay?
3 of them, yeah, but we couldn't find my father-in-law.
Prime Minister Theresa May visited the site of the tragedy on Thursday, inspecting the rescue work. She has promised a proper investigation into the reasons behind the fire.
Well, our focus today is on ensuring that there is every support available to the emergency services in their really difficult work in these terrible conditions, but also in providing help and support to all those who have been victims. And we must remember that there are people tonight who have no home to go home to. They have lost absolutely everything. So our focus must be on providing support to them. Of course, as I say, in due course, when the scene is secure, when it's possible to identify the cause of this fire, then of course there will be proper investigation, and if there are any lessons to be learned, they will be, and action will be taken.
As the country mourned the loss of lives, the European Parliament held a moment of silence to pay tribute to the victims.
Dear colleagues, once again I have to ask you to join me in a minute of silence to remember the innocent victims of this tragedy in London.
Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, it's now time for a short break. Still to come, boxing legend Floyd Mayweather will meet UFC champion Conor McGregor in a fight that has been described as a farce and a circus, but could earn both the men as much as $100 million. We'll tell you more on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Taking its name from the abundance of simul or red silk cotton trees that bloom vividly here, the Simlipal National Park is home to 3 of India's biggest animal species: tiger, Asiatic elephant, and gaur. Spread over a sprawling area of 2,750 square kilometers, set on a wide expanse of sal forest, this park is nestled in the very center of Mayurbhanj in Odisha. It is one of the most breathtaking nature reserves in India, with forests, grassy meadows, and some beautiful waterfalls like Joranda and Badehipani. It is also home to an astounding 1,078 species of plants, including 94 species of orchids.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Another US appeals court has ruled against President Donald Trump's temporary travel ban on people entering the United States from 6 Muslim-majority countries, largely upholding a lower court's decision. The court concluded that the president was required to prove his case for the ban but failed to do so. White House, however, says that it will appeal in the country's Supreme Court.
And this is the protection of the nation from foreign terrorist entry into the United States. We all know what that means. Protection of the nation from foreign terrorist entry into the United States.
US President Donald Trump had cited safety from terrorists as the reason behind a revised executive order that limits travel to 6 predominantly Muslim countries. However, there has been another setback to that revised travel ban. A US appeals court ruled against the order, saying it violated immigration legislation. The ruling from the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals is yet another stinging loss from a court that similarly refused to reinstate Trump's original executive order on travel in February.
Democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
However, the dispute is not yet over, with the White House insisting that it will take the matter to the US Supreme Court. It is noteworthy that Trump had issued the revised executive order on 6th of March after the original one, signed in January, sparked confusion at airports and protests and was struck down by the US courts. The revised 90-day ban was to apply to people from Iran, Libya, Syria, Somalia, Sudan and Yemen. It also called for a 120-day ban on all refugees. The White House continues to insist that the ban is needed for national security purposes.
We're currently reviewing that opinion. I think we can all attest that these are very dangerous times, and we need every available tool at our disposal to prevent terrorists from entering the United States and committing acts of bloodshed and violence. We continue to be confident that the President's executive order to protect this country is fully lawful and ultimately will be upheld by the Supreme Court.
The latest court's order is a further legal setback for the president's efforts to get the ban he promised his supporters during the election campaign. The revised travel ban was earlier also blocked by federal judges in Hawaii and Maryland in separate rulings just hours before it was due to come into force. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Moving on, now Prime Minister Narendra Modi will leave for the United States later this month. It will be his 5th visit to the country since 2014. The 2-day visit will include bilateral talks with Donald Trump on a range of issues including terrorism, defense and H-1B visas.
In their first ever interaction, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will hold talks with President Donald Trump later this month in the United States. The 2-day visit, scheduled for June 25th and 26th, comes months after Donald Trump invited the Prime Minister over telephone after taking over as US President in January. Trump and Modi are scheduled to hold one-on-one talks on a range of issues including defense, cross-border terrorism, trade and business cooperation.
Since the Trump administration's assumption of office, ties between India and US have not flagged but have progressed with the same pace as under Obama's administration. US is India's major defense partner and we haven't got any indication that they want to dilute this relationship.
The Prime Minister will also address India's concerns over United States' plans to reduce the number of H-1B visas that are mainly used by Indian IT workers.
I would like to assure that we are constantly in touch with the members of US Congress and administration on H-1B visa issue. When the Prime Minister travels there later this month, this is one of the issues that he is planning to raise.
Ahead of the visit, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said Donald Trump is looking forward to his meeting with Modi to discuss ways to strengthen bilateral ties to advance both countries' common priorities.
President Trump will welcome Indian Prime Minister Modi to the White House on June 26th. He looks forward to discussing the ways to strengthen our ties between the United States and India and advancing our common priorities, fighting terrorism, promoting economic growth and reforms, and expanding security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region.
Spicer also mentioned that US-India trade has grown sixfold since the year 2000, from $19 billion to $115 billion in 2016, despite the recent hiccups over the H-1B visa issue.
U.S.-India trade has grown sixfold since 2000, from $19 billion to $115 billion in 2016, and the Indian economy is growing at over 7%. U.S. energy and technologies, including natural gas, are helping to build Prime Minister Modi's vision for a new India and creating thousands of U.S. jobs in the process. I think you can expect the two of them to set forth a vision that will expand the U.S.-India partnership in an ambitious and worthy way of both countries' people.
Modi's visit comes in the backdrop of Trump announcing the withdrawal of the US from the Paris climate deal, blaming India and China for it, allegations that were strongly rejected by India. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, let's now shift focus and bring you up to speed with all the sports news you might have missed this week in sports action. Boxing legend Floyd Mayweather will meet UFC champion Conor McGregor in a fight that has been described as a farce and a circus but could earn both men as much as $100 million. American Mayweather posted a video on Twitter confirming the bout will take place in Las Vegas on the 26th of August with the message, "It's official." The fight at light middleweight will be one of the richest in boxing history. Mayweather, a former 5-weight world champion and widely considered the best boxer of his generation, retired unbeaten in 2015 after 49 bouts. 18-time Grand Slam champion Roger Federer has committed to a full schedule in the second half of the season, saying that he's had enough of practice and is hoping to quickly recapture his stunning early season form. Federer, fresh off a 2-month break to rest his 35-year-old body, began his grass court campaign and bid for an 8th Wimbledon crown at Stuttgart on Wednesday. The Swiss maestro has taken the last 2 months off after what he described as a surprisingly successful start to the year that resulted in victory at the Australian Open and then the Indian Wells Miami Masters double. Manchester United have completed the signing of defender Victor Lindelof from Benfica for £31 million. The 22-year-old Sweden international travelled to Manchester on Wednesday to discuss terms and have a medical. Lindelof, who has won 12 caps for Sweden, becomes United's most expensive defender, overtaking the £21.1 million paid for Rio Ferdinand in 2002. "I'm thrilled," said Lindelof, who joins on a 4-year contract with an option for a 5th year. The centre-back made 47 appearances as Benfica won the Portuguese domestic double last season. Spain's prosecutor's office in Madrid has filed a tax fraud lawsuit against Real Madrid star striker Cristiano Ronaldo of allegedly defrauding Spanish tax authorities of €14.7 million. The prosecutor's office in a statement said Ronaldo had knowingly used a business structure created in 2010 to hide his income in Spain from his image rights. Last summer, Barcelona legend Lionel Messi also faced similar charges for which he and his father were convicted. Former Australian skipper Ricky Ponting believes the upcoming Ashes series against England will be the biggest challenge for current skipper Steve Smith. Australia have not been in the greatest of their forms in the recent past. After a 1-2 drubbing in the 4-match Test series against India, they were knocked out of the Champions Trophy in the group stage. The 5-match Ashes series will begin on November 23rd at the Gabba, Brisbane, followed by matches at the Adelaide Oval, WACA, MCG and SCG. And finally, on the flick of a flurry of switches, a studio on a grey industrial estate in East London lights up to reveal hundreds of bright neon artworks. Owned by 43-year-old artist Marcus Bracey, the gallery in Walthamstow, called God's Own Junkyard, houses the collection of 4 generations of his family who have made, bought and displayed neon works. The pieces are accompanied by quiche memorabilia that Bracey has collected from film sets and car boot sales across Britain. I'm going to leave you with these visuals from England. Until next time, this is Frank Pereira signing off.